What's up, everybody? How's it going? Welcome back to the stream. A little bit of a delay there. Just got back from streaming Everwinter yesterday, and still resetting all my settings. So if we are, I think I'm gonna turn my music down a little bit. Hopefully that sounds better. Hopefully it wasn't too loud and everybody can hear me okay. Yeah, lots of little things to reset. Hope everybody enjoyed the coverage over the weekend, by the way. Big thanks to the Everwinter crew for asking me to come out and stream their event. It was a sweet time. The internet didn't die too often, which was good. Thanks to the hotel. The hotel there was like they were a little funky with their coverage. We were supposed to get hardline like Ethernet connections, and then they didn't work. So we were making do with the Wi-Fi, but I think everything went down pretty good. The games were great. Big congratulations to Sean Naden for winning the event, undefeated with an undefeated record and a bunch of really big wins. And then obviously everyone else who went undefeated as well, Sam Pope and Brad Chester. So an absolute triumvirate of champions over there. Sam especially, I think, is pretty exciting. He's a relatively local player. Has been sort of very slowly creeping up local event placements. He's very good at the game. He's a super sweet dude, and he plays Tyranid. So, like, literally, he's basically the sexiest man alive, essentially. But today, if you watched my video yesterday, you might notice there weren't too many events going down today, but that was largely because a lot of them were team events. And I don't normally cover team events on the Monday videos because it's a little bit difficult to sort of parse. First of all, it's harder to present them in, as clean of a fashion, I think, as we do with the normal lists, but also it's harder to parse the dynamics of a team event than it is for singles events, because team events have so much more requirements going into them than single events do, with the necessity to build for specific matchups, the pairing process, putting lists into specific matchups. So unlike a singles event where you're paired into anything, you can play against anything, and you have to be prepared for anything, team events are much more selective, where you can have lists that are particularly good or bad in specific matchups, but that's okay because you're gonna try to avoid those during the pairing process, and that's not available to singles events. That said, a ton of team events went down this weekend, and so that's what we're going to be, I think, focusing on a little bit today, because the one interesting thing about team events is that one thing that we see is that these factions that are not doing well in singles competitive play, you can look at factions like Imperial Knights, you can look at Genestealer cults. There's a lot of these factions that are really at the bottom percentile in singles events, but do extremely well in team events, because oftentimes they're skew lists that get answered in the singles meta, but again, in team events, you can avoid those, or you can put them into matchups that are particularly disadvantaged to them. If you have a Genestealer cult list with 200 deep striking models, and your opponent, you can get them into a list that's not Space Marines, it's not these mass infantry sweepers, you can put them in a situation where your opponent has really no recourse against you. And so that can dramatically inflate the win percentage of a faction like Genestealer cults. And the same for something like Imperial Knights, where you're taking a bunch of big knights, a bunch of T10, high OC, fast movers, whereas in a singles event, people have answers to those big toughness values. In a team event, you can put them into matchups where you're up against armies that don't necessarily have the level of armor cracking needed to kill these knights, and you can guarantee that they have good matchups. So it's interesting because team events give life to a lot of the less played factions in Warhammer 40k, and that's what we're going to be discussing a little bit today. But I also want to thank everybody for coming to hang out and joining. Space Wolves with that 5-0 with the empty drop pod. I know, yeah, drop pods are unironically really good. My camera's doing a weird thing today, by the way. Let's see if I can manually fix it here. Oh god, that's so shaky. Nope, now it's on the ceiling. Oh my god. I don't know what's wrong with my camera. It's like auto tracking keeps turning on and off. Let me see if I can fix it real quick. Okay, there we go. Super weird. I think it just like lost focus of my face or something. But we're just gonna put it on. We're gonna lock it in place over here. So I apologize for that. Yeah, the Space Dust list with the empty drop pod is really cool. I think drop pods they're the unsung heroes of Space Marine faction for sure. The weird part, I guess drop pods are fortunate too, because they got the, they don't have any downsides for carrying, right? They can't carry any 40 mil base models really, like largely outside characters, like no Gravis, no Terminators. But they can carry Tacticus or Firstborn stuff, which basically none of the other transports can do outside Land Raiders. So, and I guess Repulsors, I think Repulsors can. But obviously the benefit there is that you can, they can deliver a lot more interesting combos than a lot of other transports in the faction. Plus they come down turn 1. The big downside, I think, is that their transport capacity is low. It's only 10, so you can't fit characters in it unless you're taking 5-mans. But the benefit of them being able to come down and perform actions and do secondaries and stuff is like super strong. So I think that's really, really cool. It'll be interesting to see whether that's technology that's picked up in the future. I think like in the cost comparison, I think I mentioned it in the video yesterday, like a Calidus Assassin is so good that it's hard to justify the extra 20 points. It's hard not to justify the extra 20 points for the Calidus, because the drop pod you get the turn 1 deep strike, which the Calidus you don't get. But the Calidus you get deep strikes every other turn, so your opponent constantly has to screen. They're constantly worrying about tactical secondaries being drawn, and you always have this tool in the toolbox. Plus the Calidus Assassin kind of slaps, right? It's got like an anti-infantry flamer and first strike with lethal hits, which is really good. Plus Evact. Like the amount that the Calidus Assassin gives you is tough. So I think it's hard to justify the comparison, but I think that drop pods offer you like a unique set of bonuses that the Calidus doesn't normally give you. It is weird being like so big. It's physically very large. Like at its widest, assuming the pedals aren't down, at its widest point, it's like 4.5 inches wide, I think. So it's easy to screen out, which is a little bit unfortunate. But if your opponent's not prepared for that and they've never seen it before, you might be able to catch him out. I could see like a lot of lists running infiltrators will put an infiltrator like sort of dead center of the table, so you can't get teleport homers, you can't get area denial top of 1 if you draw them with the turn 1 drop pod. But again, obviously that lets you kill their infiltrators, so maybe it's fine. Anyway, I think it's cool technology either way. A little bit of housekeeping. I'm going to be live basically every day this week over on the Purple channel, and about an hour after this stream concludes at 7 p.m. US Eastern, so 2 hours and 40 minutes from now, that's going to be the T5S2 GT semifinals. We're 4-0 right now with Thousand Suns going into Ultramarines. It's a Vanguard Spearhead, I believe. So I have no idea how that matchup's going to go, and I'm really interested to see. I think that Laser Beam Centurions are going to be kind of good, but maybe we can get out of it. I don't know. Well, I'm excited. I'm excited. I feel like it's probably... I don't know. I feel like Thousand Suns have a lot of tools in that matchup, so I feel like it's probably pretty even. They definitely get outmaneuvered by the uppy downies in the Vanguard Strike Force, but they can... Oh boy, can they kill heavy infantry all day. So, should be a good game. I'm excited. And with that, I think we'll get into talking. And then obviously we have streams going on the rest of the weekend. I'm playing against Astra Militarum tomorrow. It's a WTC format event. And then we have some commentary on Thursday, as well as more games on Friday. We're playing the Space Marine Captain list again on Friday. If you watched that last week, that game was wild. And I'll probably have a video about that, a battle report video about that later this week. So if you liked my Snakes on a Plane video, we're going to be doing one for Space Marine Captains, which should be fun. And then I think we might have more commentary happening on Sunday too. So literally tons and tons of streaming this week, which should be fun. All right. Well, let's hop in. Let's talk about some freaking lists and stuff. We're over here on BCP. Oh boy, and my window is fucked. What has happened here? It's all to the left. All right. No, that actually seems fine. All right, cool. Let's dive in. So I was poking through a lot of the team events earlier today. We have the Peterborough Slam, which is a 3-man team event, 3-person team event, I guess, to be politically correct. As well as the Clan Wars team series. If I remember correctly, there was another one. Yeah, here we go. Hispalis Imperium is another one. By the way, for those who don't know, Spain is like the mecca of 40k team events. It feels kind of weird. I guess not weird. It's just very idiosyncratic. Where Spain runs some of the consistently largest events in the world, but they very rarely get talked about. And we've touched on them a little bit on this channel, but we probably haven't given them their due time in the sun because they're always team events, and they fucking love team events in Spain. Holy crap, do they love team events? And they will run consistently, once a month, once every 2 months or so. They'll run 100+ person majors, super majors that are team events. And they will occasionally break like 200-300 players. They run enormous events over in Spain, and they are almost always team events. So we can poke into some of the results here. And again, this is kind of what I'm saying, right? This is the Clan Wars Team series, but these factions that don't necessarily have a good win rate in singles events tend to have a hugely inflated win rate in team events. Like we look at Tau Empire. 5-0. Genestealer Cult 5-0 with 420s on their record. Tyranids at 401 in Wilson with them. And then a bunch of Chaos Space Marines down here in the X1. Look at all this. Eldar Chaos Space Marines X1. Who would have thought in the comparison, right? You're like, oh, Orcs, Genestealer Cult, Tau Empire 5-0. Chaos Space Marines in the garbage. Look at that. Big goose egg on their final place, on their final result there. Although they do have 320s and a 19, which is pretty good. Yeah, so lots of interesting results to talk about. Lots of interesting lists to poke into. Look at this, 2 Chaos Knights. That's wild at 5-0. Immediate, right on the top. A 5-0 Drukhari. Yeah, it's super cool. So we'll start talking about the Peterborough Slam, and if anybody has any lists that they want me to cover, or factions that they want me to dive into, or teams that they want me to dive into, please let me know. So the War Masters team, which I believe that Jack Tight was on. Yeah, so this is Skauki, who is a T5S2 Invitational finalist, who I think we talked about last week, his Adeptus Sororitas list at 5-0. So his team went undefeated. This is the War Masters team. Unfortunately, it's hard to see who is on the team. Sororitas, Tau Empire, Thousand Suns. So Adeptus Sororitas is a very consistent scoring faction, right? If you can't table them, like they have decent artillery. We'll take a look at what Skauki is actually playing. So we have the Dialogus Palatine combo, which is pretty ubiquitous, I think, now in Adeptus Sororitas lists. Plus Morphin Ball and a Paragon unit. 2 sister squads. One of them's going to get the full combo. We might split one into an Immolator, a Rhino for the Arcoflagellants, 1 Castigator, 2 units of 2 Crusaders, 2 units of Exorcists, a Paragon Warsuit team, Seraphim, and a Calidus Assassin. Yeah, so tons and tons of scoring. We have the 2 Crusader units. We have the Seraphim squad, which can come in, shoot and scoot, and get really, really awkward positions for your opponent. They're like a threat for capture enemy outposts, too. Calidus Assassin obviously always has the uppy downies. So this list is extremely good at scoring. It's extremely good at infantry sweeping with the Arcoflagellants. And then it also has some pretty decent anti-tank with the Exorcist and Castigator, plus the Battle Sister squad. It's not the greatest anti-tank in the world, but it is good enough to be able to chew through some tough armies. So then we also have Tau Empire. So Tau Empire is, if we are running cyclics, mass cyclics, it looks like we're also running Ghost Keels. So we do have the 1 big cyclic unit and then 3 Ghost Keel battlesuits. So again, we're relatively scoring focused. We can forward deploy all this stuff. Plus we have a 2 Pathfinder teams, for again more forward operation, and stealth battlesuits and Tetras for the same reason. Then we have the 1 big Crisis battlesuit unit, and the big thing that this does in team events. So 2 broadside battlesuit units, so good anti-tank there as well. But then we also have the big Crisis battlesuit unit, and that can one-shot a lot of units that other factions have issues with. So things like Accursed Cultists, these kind of big bricks that you need to one-tap, things like Necron Warriors. Necron Warriors are incredibly good in team events because a lot of armies can't deal with a unit of Necron Warriors. But Tau, with this unit, they just have an answer. They shoot... what is that? 40. It's like 56 shots, right? It's 12 from the commander and then 9 times 6 crisis battlesuits. with all cyclic ion bashers. Yeah, they shoot 56 shots with sustain 2 when they're with full rerolls, hitting on 3s. So they just fish for 6s, and they get, you know, somewhere in the realm of like 70 to 80 hits, and then they wound most of those targets on 2s and force 2 damage shots through, which usually cancels out feel no pains those units might have. So you can one-shot Accursed Cultist units, you can one-shot Necron Warrior units, you can one-shot, you know, these like Gant Swarms and stuff like that. So all these really heavy scoring skews, the Crisis Battlesuits just kill them. And then you have like a pretty resilient back line of broadside battlesuits. And you put all your command points into keeping these guys going, basically. You're going to be, you know, strike and fading them, keeping them out of line of sight, out of charge range, and just and body blocking with the Ghost Kill battlesuits to try to get more shots out of them. And then Thousand Suns, I think, can answer the opposite of the skew, right? Thousand Suns are very good if you want to come brawl with them. If you want to come to fight Thousand Suns in the middle of the table, they don't necessarily have the same level of like volume fire, but they will, if you have an armor save, they'll kill you. If you don't have an invulnerable save, you're just dead to Thousand Suns. It's super duper tough to stop. The mass devastating wounds, mass armor ignoring, thanks to Twist of Fate. So yeah, we have double disc sorcerers, one with a crystal. So these guys are super duper fast. They can jump around and they can slow down melee threats. So things like if you're not in transports and you're melee armies like orcs or world eaters, you're just gonna get really like basically cocked by the exalted sorcerers, because they're gonna half your movement, advance and charge rolls, and you're just going to get seized up and blown off the table. And then 2 Infernal Masters for damage output, Magnus because he's Drad, and a Lord of Forbidden Lore Sorcerer to sit in the back and recast a billion rituals. Plus 5 units of Rubric Marines, 1 unit of one Rhino, and Mulith Vortex Beast and Changing. Pretty standard stuff. But this is sort of what I'm talking about, right? We don't see Space Marines, we don't see Chaos Space Marines, we don't see Eldar. We're taking like a trifecta of lists that can all answer slightly different things, and in some situations have hard counters to like many very common matchups in the metagame. And if you're able to get them into the correct pairings, you can you know, blow those out, score big on those results, and then win your round. Yeah, so we were playing WTC format, so we're trying to I don't know what exactly the margin is for a 3-player team, but you want to score the biggest differential between you and your opponent. And if we can take a look at the War Masters pairings, Hotshot, any live events coming up? I'm talking with one to stream first weekend of January, but that's not confirmed yet, so it's not on the calendar quite yet. So it might be, that would be like 3 weeks from now. Yeah, 3 weeks from now. Otherwise, the next one would be Captain Con in February. But if you have any live events that you want me to stream, tell the TOs to get in touch with me, because we can make it happen. Skouky's in chat. What's up, dude? Mr. Jack, how's it going? Don't you let me give you credit, okay? I mean, I also think that there is something to be said for players playing what they're comfortable with. One thing that with team events, and I'm not going to say that I have a ton of experience playing team events in 40K. In fact, I have almost none. I have only run team events in 40K. But playing team events in other games, the biggest factor to playing a faction was something that you were comfortable with, because the worst thing you could do is force somebody into a pairing or into a list archetype that they had never played before or they didn't like, because oftentimes they're like, whatever, I don't care. They play so loosey-goosey that they lose. So, speaking personally as well, you know, if you want to work around people's strengths rather than like force them into matchups that they really want to play. Yeah, so it looks like round 2 got a big outscore on Adeptus Mechanicus. Get out of here, AdMech. That one seems tough because they don't really have like, you need some like solid indirect fire and stuff like that to be able to deal with all the little Adeptus Sororitas scoring units. And if you can't do that and you just have to like trade 1-for-1 with them, they're just gonna outscore you. Especially with things like Castigators and Exorcists being so good against like Breacher teams or big Breacher bricks. Our Thousand Suns went down in a big way, unfortunately, 2 Eldar. All right, well, that's fair. I don't think that's too surprising. Eldar, pretty good. Also, triple Night Spinner Eldar. Thousand Suns really don't have a good way to deal with indirect fire. So having mass indirect fire to just pick up the rubric teams and to slow them down, which affects their double move, is really unfortunate. And then Tau blowing up World Eaters for a close win. Round 3, those double sorcerers, disc sorcerers doing good work against orcs. Adeptus Sororitas outscoring Eldar. Hell yeah. This is Eldar. Oh, excuse me. Oh my god. Stuffy nose today, chat. Jeez. This is Eldar with only 1 Night Spinner, so less of the indirect fire to deal with the little Adeptus Sororitas scoring stuff. So if they can get in and get like the big Melta combo on the Wraithguard brick, there's a non-zero chance they just blow it up. And then the other stuff can just continuously score. Tau unfortunately went down in a close one to Astra Militarum. Astra Militarum, especially the lists that are focused on Catachan jungle fighters, which this list was not, to be fair. But I can kind of see that we have mass Cadian shock troop teams, which is sort of like an MSU energy that Tau have a difficulty answering because they can't split fire effectively. It's hard for them to split fire and kill 2 different units with the big bricks, because the big bricks, like the split shots, get -1 ballistic skill and don't get the sustain benefit. They get sustain 1 but not sustain 2, if I remember correctly. They do get rerolls from Tetras, but that's not usually enough to get all the way through. And then just a billion Lehman Russes. You outnumbered the broadsides in a big way with that many Lehman Russes too. But that still is a close game, so that's really good for a team score. If you can keep them to an 11-9, then that's ideal. That's the best result to get with a draw or with a loss. Same thing in this round, and then a big win against Custodes with Thousand Suns. That's a tough one for Custodes, because the disc sorcerers can really clap them. There's like very little that Custodes can do up against them. Rapid Ingress isn't even that useful against Thousand Suns, because they can, if you're running Alaris and Venatari, which we were running a lot of Alaris Custodians. So being able to like put them in Deep Strike and Ingress in is not a solution to that it would be in most other matchups, because the Thousand Suns can move reactively. So you can come in to set yourself up for a charge next turn, and then the Thousand Suns will either move away so your charge is really hard, or move into the terrain you're hiding behind and then shoot you. Plus, you don't have any defense against Devastating Wounds anymore, so Devastating just like absolutely destroys you if it's not the Custodian Warden's 4+ Feel No Pain turn. So yeah, I can see that one being a little bit awkward. And then a close win against Iron Hands. Running Iron Storm with Fieros. Whoa! Look at that. The great man himself, Iron Father Fieros. +2 Tech Marines. We're all in on the Iron Hands meme. A big heavy Intercessor squad. So Fieros gives a 5+ Feel No Pain. So oftentimes you see them with the big Intercessor squad to hold down midboard objectives. Just be really hard to kill. I don't know if I love it. Heavy Intercessors, like, they're okay, I guess. But they are kind of expensive. Plus Eliminator squads, Redemptor Dreadnoughts, Scout squads, Repulsor Executioner, and a Vindicator. Doesn't seem like it has the volume to kill with all the little Adeptus Sororitas stuff, but maybe I'm wrong. And then final round. We'll never know. There it is. Oh, big blowout in the final round. Holy crap. 20-0 against Eldar, 15-5 against whatever this is. Ooh. Not what I wanted to look at. Thank you. Against Tyranids. Yeah, fair enough. And 11-9 against World Eaters. Ooh, that final score. That's tough. That one's tough. So congratulations to War Masters for taking it down. But I think like we can see, you know, even if there wasn't so much intentionality behind the list archetypes, I think we can see why they would be so effective in a team format, right? Even though they're not necessarily top factions that you see all the time at the upper echelon. I guess like Adeptus Sororitas is, but the other ones are kind of mid-tier at best. But the benefit of the team format is that you can use the strengths of those factions to answer specific matchups. How does a team event even work in 40K? So most of the ones that we're going to be talking about today are WTC format. So the two teams will come to the table. Usually tables will have, there'll be a single mission for all of the tables. And then tables will have varying terrain sets. And then the two teams go through a process to pair off the players. And it depends on the size of the event, usually how that process works. But there's a process that the captains use to pair off the players with specific matchups. Usually you'll present two matchups, or one team will present a list. The other team will present two lists to answer it, and then the first team comes back and chooses one of the two matchups that the other team's given them. So you don't have complete control over the matchups that you get, but you have like a general idea of what you're going to be getting. And so if you have lists that are very generically good at scoring and at worst can hold their opponents to like an 11-9, 10-10 result, which refers to the margin between the two scores. Every point between them is a 5-point differential. So an 11-9, for example, would be the two scores are within 5 or are 5 points separated. A 12-8 means that they would be 10 points separated. A 13-7 means they would be 15 points separated, for example. So you want to keep that differential as low as possible. You want to score as highly as possible and prevent your opponent from scoring as much as possible. And then the final result of that is your differential, and all those get added together to determine the final winner. So you can have armies that are just, something like Tyranids, for example, which is not very good in a singles event, but they can score really highly. They just can't really kill anything. Because they have Spore Mines, they have Gargoyles, they have lots and lots of scenario control. So you could put them up first and be like, regardless of what army I'm playing against, I'm probably going to score 50 points. Which means that all I have to do is keep them, to within 5 or 10 points of me. And then it's essentially a draw. It's kind of a wash in the final score. So whatever the other team gives you is okay with you. And then you get to pick whichever matchup you want. So once the one team will present a list, the other team will present two pairings for it. The first team will choose one of the pairings, and then present two lists for the remaining list to fight against. And they'll go through that until the final score is calculated, and then the final pairings are calculated. And they'll go through that for all of the players, and then each of those pairings will play a single game of 40K. So it's not a team event like you are playing multiple armies in the same table. Each pair of players is still a separate game, but the results of those games are compiled together for the final score. Don't see any 2v2 tournaments. Is that a thing? It is, but it's usually very casual. 2v2 tournaments don't work particularly well in competitive events. So you will often see them at like local game stores and stuff. Like players will often play them. They're called doubles events usually. You'll see doubles or trios events. I know Nova Open for a while ran a big doubles event. I assume that they still do. That's usually like early in the weekend. It's kind of a casual thing for people to like shake the rust off, and it's usually like it's super fun, right? You're just like kicking back with a friend and like just like jamming with two people on the other side. But the combination of armies tends to get kind of like the power level's very spiky. You occasionally get like teams where one player is like more or less invested than the other, and so it feels like playing one person playing two armies versus just two people each playing an army and that kind of stuff. So it's kind of all over the place in terms of like the competitive experience, but they do happen. They're just not usually as accredited as like the WTC format that we just discussed. Round 2, Magnus got one shot turn 1 by 3 Knights winners? Really? Do you even does he not have Impossible form active? He was just like, I'll go for speed, and then the Knights winner's like, okay, sure, let's go for it. That's insane. That like math should not happen. Assuming that they were firing indirect, right? They shoot an average of like 7 shots, call it 7, and then they hit, let's say 4 with the reroll, and then they probably get 1 devastate and 2, and probably like 1 additional wound. Call it 2 additional wounds. So on the whole, you're doing 6 damage on Devastates, and then you force 6 saves. And so you should take like 8 maybe from all 3 Warp Spinner or Night Spinner shooting with no Impossible form active. But you just did 14 or 16 or whatever. Jesus, that's nuts. That's nuts. He deliberately went for speed to bait the spinner shooting him. And it's a sub 1% chance. Yeah, I mean, sometimes it just happens. I've had that experience in team events quite a bit. It like especially WTC, it feels like there's so much incentive to like go for the silly plays because the chance that you get the 20-0 is like nuts. And if you get the 20-0, sometimes you just like your team just wins the event. If you go from a 9-11 loss to a 20-0 win, so it's like upsets the metrics so hard. You're just like, all right, whatever. We'll go for the we'll go for the hard 6 to just win the whole round outright. That's insane. Nova runs trios now. It sounds like a nightmare. I'm sure it's fun. I'm sure it's a good time. One Astro Militar max indirect with unending swarm nids to protect them. Yeah. Yeah. You just you play 1,000 points of Astro Militar. Unending swarm nids are basically guardsmen, but like cheaper and better. So you're essentially just playing guard, but half of you are bugs. It is insane that Night Spinners have devastating wounds. Like, I get it. It's just the twin linked. I think the twin linked is what pushes them over. I would rather they be like strength 9 or something, but not twin linked. Like, if you want them to be able to hit vehicles for a little bit of damage, like, that's fine. But the twin linked is like so fucking nuts on them. It's insane. Because you could just fish for 6s, and sometimes you just roll 4 6s, and you're just like, hey, take 8. It's kind of crazy. Manso, would I be at LVO? I do not plan to be at LVO right now. That's the last weekend of January. I had talked about it, streaming it. Oh, it's the second to last weekend of January. I had talked about streaming it because I could work it out with the FLG guys to stream it, but it would be so costly for me to get to the other end of the country. That it would be super tough. I don't know. I'd have to do like a GoFundMe to get me to LVO with all my stuff, basically. So I'm not currently no plans to go to LVO. They shouldn't cancel advances. Yeah, probably. It's weird that they don't have the same suppression effect as other stuff. I wish that they had just templated suppression. I wish or suppression versus like whatever. The Earthshaker bombardment ability. It's kind of silly that like half of them work on infantry and half of them don't. It's kind of silly that half of them are like -2 move and some of them are like -2 advance and charge, and some are, and then the Night Spinner is just like the wildly most powerful version of all of them for no reason. Like, just make them all -2 move, advance, and charge on everything, and then you're good. You're done. Or even just like -2. Move and charge or something, even if you don't want to affect advances. I don't know. It's very silly. It's well, I don't think it's a shocker that well, crazy. The Night Spinners are probably too strong, but it is what it is. All right. Should we keep talking about some team events, chat? We've gone on several tangents over here. So the next one that we can talk about is the Clan Wars team series. This one is over in Scotland. It was won by Slavchak. Who is on Slavchak? God. PCP sometimes, I swear. It's tough. So this is Innes Wilson's team. I guess it's like stat check people plus a bunch of Slavs, so that makes sense. Yeah, so again, like no Eldar, no Chaos Space Marines, Orcs, Blood Angels, Tyranids, Genocide, TacticalTortoise. Let's take a look at the Blood Angels list. It is not I guess it is a Blood Angels list because it has Ball Predators. But it's the Ironstorm Spearhead variety, which is probably the strongest variety of Ironstorm Spearhead, to be fair. And I think we've talked about lists like these in the past. We got Lamarties with the Death Company Jump Pack team. We've got a Tech Marine with Target Augury. We've got the Sanguinora for the reactive Deep Strike. You can Deep Strike into melee with people who charge you. Heroic Intervene out of reserve, which is cool. 2 Ball Predators. These are good for just like skirmishing with infantry early game because you can advance them. They have like a billion flamer attacks, so they're good at just clearing out utility units and stuff. And then triple Interceptor Squads, Scouts, Stormhawk Interceptors, which we did talk about in the past. Was a kind of a response to indirect fire because they ignore obscuring as long as they maintain hover, or they don't go into hover mode, which I don't believe that they can. It's the gunships that can. So they can just deep strike on turn 2 and then come into a really awkward position where you can see your opponent and then blow up their indirect fire with assault cannons and Typhoon missile launchers, plus triple whirlwinds. So the whirlwinds can ping you for a couple wounds. That turns on Mercy's weakness, and the Stormhawk Interceptors come in. You get exploding 5s on whatever you're shooting at, and it's like a bunch of high strength, pretty solid damage stuff. Exploding 5s and lethal 5s from the Tech Marine, and then you're just like killing people's Night Spinners and things. So that's a bit of a meta answer. Orcs is another good one. It's very aggressive, so if you don't have an army that can deal with the aggression and they don't have enough like screens and body blocks to prevent orcs from coming into you, they can just come in and blow you up. Plus, it's a very high-scoring army. A lot of orc players just windmill slam, deploy teleport hummers, and that other one that people play. God, have I ever played this game before? Cleanse. Jesus Christ. Because they have so many individual units. They have the Gretchen, like 40-point Gretchen units, which are relatively large and hard to one-shot. A bunch of trucks, which can disembark occupants and then go over and cleanse objectives by themselves, plus Storm Boys. So you're super aggressive. And you can use that aggression to like open up the back line or the midboard of the table. Like your opponent can't go into the midboard themselves without being killed because you'll charge them and they'll die. So they have to push backwards, which lets you cleanse easily. And then you set the line of scrimmage like on their deployment line, especially if you go first. And then you could just get whatever it is, 6-7 points in secondaries every turn until you win the game. 8 points in secondaries, I guess. And so your secondaries are capped and you probably have good primaries. So like worst case scenario, you might lose in the late game, but worst case, you're probably coming down to a draw. Oh, I just closed the window. That was stupid of me. What am I doing with my life? Tyranids. Playing Synaptic Nexus. Again, Tyranids are really good for this format because they can score really highly. They don't win very often, but they do score a lot. So we're running Neuro Tyrant. So this is Synaptic Nexus. So we have a Neuro Tyrant with the buffed Flamer, Hive Tyrant with -1 damage, 2 units of Gargoyles, and then triple Norn Assimilators and a Norn Emissary. So just tons and tons of high OC stuff. So you want to put this list into something that doesn't have tons of armor cracking, and then you just hold the middle objectives. Like each Norn points at a different objective and says, I'm going to take that. You have 2 uses of the Armor of Contempt stratagem online. So the Norn Assimilators, 2 of the Norn Assimilators every round, because of the Hive Tyrant, are a 1+ armor save, and then probably in cover, so a 0+ armor save. So if you're not super high AP or ignore cover, then you don't really get through them. Plus they hit pretty hard because they're assimilators and not emissaries. And so you could just hang out and score points. And you have a Biolore for secondaries, you have Gargoyles for secondaries, and then the Norns are just hanging out for the entire game. Gene Stealer Cult's sort of the opposite, right? We're just going to be running a ton of infantry. So again, if you don't have the armies that have a 3-inch deep strike stratagem are super strong in this format because you can try to put them into like not Space Marines, not the mirror match. Anybody who doesn't have a deep strike denial effect, probably not Adeptus Mechanicus randomly if they're taking Techno Archaeologists. Because then you can tunnel crawl the Acolyte hybrids up into opponents' objectives, and you can just steal their objectives or threaten them at least and force them to position weirdly around your 3-inch deep strike, and then blow them up with demolition charges. So Again, super sick skew list. Not quite as good in singles events, especially with how popular infiltrators are right now. But very good if your opponent only has one Space Marine army. And it is important to note as well that most of the time, especially in the WTC format, each codex, or each index, I should say, is exclusive. So you can only have one Space Marine index, only one Chaos Space Marine index, only one Eldari. So you're never going to run into a team of 5 Space Marine players who all have infiltrators and like your Genestealer Cult players who's going to get mowed down. You will have to deal with at max one of those. And then, of course, Adeptus Sororitas, as we talked about before. This one's extremely scoring focused. We have the Paragon Warsuits, we have the Battle Sisters Wombo combo, and then we're also running 4 Crusaders, 10 Zephyrim, 10 Seraphim, and 2 Rhinos for scoring. So dropping the Immolator out of Scout Case list, and the additional unit of Battle Sisters for tons of scoring units. So we have 1 million Deep Strikers, 1 million Strategic Reserves, and everything can come in and score you billions and billions of points. We can take a look at their... I think it's interesting to note, too, that I believe the... well, we get to see Brian Sipe, Patrick... Okay, actually, this whole team went undefeated, basically, so they kind of rolled everyone. Look through their pairings real quick. Think about Inky. She'd be so lonely. Yeah, fortunately, my next door neighbors are... they travel a lot too, and so we go back and forth like cat sitting for each other. We both have cats, and so we're always good to take care of each other's cats, which is nice. Tower bad in teams? No, I think Tower good in teams. It's less about the scoring and more about the matchups, because Tau have the Crisis Battlesuit brick is a statistical. It's a set of statistics that very few other factions in the game have. In fact, basically nobody has the volume of 2 damage shooting that Tau has, which is ludicrously strong into some matchups. It's just real good. So they blew away this matchup and this matchup. This one got a little bit closer. We got a draw on the record within us against Adeptus Sororitas. So two's really scoring heavy armies, but then they blew out the other matchup, so it wasn't that big of a deal. Round 4 got very close. Orcs 20-0'd. Oh, God. Orcs 20-0'd against Space Wolves. But it is a Stormlance. Yeah, I think I was talking to Sean Naden about this matchup over the weekend. He said he played against Stormlance, and the problem is that you're playing against these Thunderwolf cavalry books that cost your opponent upwards of 400 points, right? Because you're looking at a Thunderwolf Lord, so he's 100-ish points. These ones don't have Wolfguard battle leaders, so they're a little bit less expensive, but that also means they don't have reactive moves, which is a little bit funny. Not that it matters in the Orc matchup, to be fair. Which might have been a consideration. We're going to take this to fight to countercharge enemy aggressive armies, but then they don't. So we don't need the anti-shooting tech. But just the Thunderwolf profile is so good for orcs. They can do the -1 to hit and wound. But orcs can trigger Unbridled Carnage, right? Which gives them a 5-up critical. Is that what they do? Yeah, so they can get 5-up criticals, and if they can get lethal hits on their big bricks, that pushes through the -1 strat really easily. And their profiles are so good into Thunderwolf Cavalry because they're usually mass AP 1, which if you're not paying for Armor of Contempt, which this detachment doesn't have a ton of CP. It does have the 2 Rites of Battles, which is nice. Obviously, you only get 1 per battle round, to be fair. But it takes so many command points to run all the stratagems for the detachment that you don't have a lot of stratagems for Armor of Contempt unless you're saving a lot somewhere. And then you're not reactive moving, you're not plus advancing, and the threat range being similar between Thunderwolf Cavalry and a Disembark and Advance and Charging Orc unit is a little bit awkward for Space Wolves because they're so used to out threatening people. So you can like give them Storm Boys and Gretchen and garbage to chew on, and then keep all your important stuff out of threat range or at the limit of their threat range, and then come in and counterpunch them once they commit, because they have to commit the Thunderwolves to actually clear the screens. And then once they do that, you turn on the aggression, and under the law, Thunderwolf Cavalry units just melt, because you're just forcing them on their invuln save with mass attacks. They usually go down. Ines 15-5 against Paul Jensen, who I think is Glarg, who we've streamed before, playing Chaos Space Marines. That's interesting. That one feels... This matchup actually feels kind of relatively even for Tyranids. Although it is an interesting matchup because of the Norns. But I guess it is like it's a lot of kind of middling AP values, and you're trying to out devastate your opponent. The Forge Fiends is the toughest thing for the Tyranids to answer, I guess. But there's only 2 of them, and they can spike pretty low. And they certainly don't like one-shot a Norn Emissary or a Norn Assimilator on an objective, because if they have their 5+ Feel No Pain, even if you're getting a bunch of devastating wounds with their whole Wombo combo active, then you are they're just gonna save through a lot of it. So it's probably not too bad, actually. You probably just take 4 or 5 damage from each of those activations, and that's not going to kill you. The Obliterator's a little bit scary, but they have to like come out and get you, basically, and then you can counter shoot them. And then I think the Chosen, you can kind of Armor of Contempt through the Chosen bricks. And if you just eat the first hit and then come back and kill everyone, then you're good to go. Plus, you're probably outscoring Chaos Space Marines with Tyranids pretty well. GSC, close game against the Necrons. It's the 20 Necron Warriors, chat. It's the 20 Warriors. They're tough to kill. Now, I don't know if this is post-Codex or not. No, it's definitely not, right? Because the Sempiterna Weave can't go onto the Khitan in the Codex, right? So this must have list locked before the Codex came in. But it's like 2 mass OC armies just beating up on each other. And I guess eventually the Genestealer Cult might be able to deal with the Necron Warrior brick, but they can also probably just outlast the Necron Warrior brick. Because if you put Neophytes into it and you just tie them up, like you're both on the objectives and you're both respawning a bunch of models every turn. So you can kind of just like leave them there and just fight with the rest of the army. And you can probably eventually kill the remainder of the army with Acolyte hybrids. So that seems okay. And then Blood Angels is the last matchup in a draw against Thousand Suns. This matchup's really fun, actually. I played this on stream recently. The Thousand Suns versus... Oh, this is Mass Forge Fiends, though. People like the Forge Fiends, but they're not quite as good against the vehicle-heavy Space Marine armies because they don't wound particularly efficiently. Is the downside. They're rolling a lot of like 4s to wound. 3s to hit, 4s to wound with no rerolls. And you're just like, oh, hope for the best. So they can under-spike pretty hard. Although they're not too expensive, so it's not that big of a deal. But then they just get picked up by Lancers and things. But just the Thousand Suns' ability to kill Space Marine vehicles is like unparalleled. But it's the little utility units. It's the scouts and like the triple inceptors that Thousand Suns don't really have an answer to, and so that's, you know, they just get 1 billion points on assassination and 1 billion points on deploy teleport homers, and you have to fight through that. It feels like a pretty even matchup, which is, I mean, obviously, as we see here, is a 10-10 draw, which seems about right. I think that's a really fun one. And then they went to the finals, where they did lose a game. Blood Angels lost into Death Guard. Just a bunch of Plague Marines pushing up the table with 3 Plague Burst Crawlers. That's interesting. But then they just blew out their other matchup, so that's pretty good. Good stuff. Best way to meet melee is fall forward and phase through the enemy, risk desperate escape rolls to gain board position. I don't know if that's entirely true. The, like, melee armies aren't like necessarily like doing wraps and traps on you. They're just trying to pin you in and like actually kill you. But this is probably the edition where falling back has the least downsides, because like half the armies in the game have access to a fallback and do stuff ability somewhere, and then also, like you said, you can desperate escape through things. So melee armies are largely just trying to kill you. But they could just physically body block movement with their charge rolls. Like they don't, outside of the thing that they're charging, they don't have to move into combat with anything. So a lot of times what they'll do is they'll actually just like charge and then use the charge to like string out in front of the other stuff that you want to be dealing with, and then just physically like body block it. But it's also like, it's a downside if you have multi-layered threats on in a melee army, because that's not what I want to do. Because you can move forward to gain board position, but then the second wave will just hit you, right? So like the scary part for the non-melee army is the threat range of the other stuff behind them, I guess. Thoughts on Vanguard using Shrike? I actually don't know if Shrike has the most utility in Vanguard. It's like a little funny because I think that... Thanks, Inky. Just put your tail in the way. I think that... Oh, there you are. Like, the Raven Guard kind of, like, stuff is sort of perennially really bad in the Raven Guard detachment. And that's always kind of how it's been, where, like, old OG Raven Guard lists were always, like, heavy intercessors, or heavy infantry and stuff, you know, Gravis stuff and Centurions. And that's how I think it is again. I think Shrike is really good, but I think that, as John Lennon has proved, I think that if you want to get the most out of Vanguard, you play Ultramarines, because their characters are better. Like, Uriel Ventress and Marneus Calgar are just, like, so insane for that detachment. It's really strong. I think Shrike is always good. I've talked about Shrike in the past. I think that his datasheet is just, like, independently really good. But the downside of Shrike is the opportunity cost of the other faction, the other detachments that you're losing. So, I mean, it's like, fine, because you can play that stuff outside of... you can play the heavy infantry and stuff outside of Ultramarines. There's no, like, specific synergy besides Marneus Calgar. But I think Ultramarines are going to be better, for sure. Unironically, I probably like Shrike and, like, Iron Storm. I don't know if it's as good as the Blood Angels Iron Storm, but it gives you, like, uppy downies and maneuverability in a detachment that's kind of traditionally non-maneuverable. And there were Gladius Task Force lists with him that were really good pre-Codex, where your entire army was lone operative, where you had, like, Primaris Lieutenants, Phobos Librarians, plus Shrike, and then you had a couple things in Strategic Reserve, and everything else besides vehicles was untargetable. Because Shrike gives his unit lone operative, the Phobos Librarians give their units lone operative, and you just have, like, you're, like, really good at scoring backline objectives because your opponent can't interact with you, which I think is really cool. I don't know if Vanguard is necessarily the best place for it. There's especially, like, even a little bit of anti-synergy, because Vanguard makes you harder to kill at long range, and Shrikes make you untargetable at long range. So you don't even, like, get the benefits of the detachment if you have Shrike in your unit, which is, like, all right. Not that that's, like, it's better to be untargetable than it is to be harder to kill, but it is kind of funny that way. Yeah. Yeah, I think Shrike is really good. I mean, I've talked about him before. I think Shrike is, like... Shrike is definitely independently strong enough that you consider Raven Guard. I'm not sold that that is the best attachment for him. He might even be good in, like, Stormlands, because he can advance and charge with his Vanguard squad. But it's probably better in Gladius Task Force. I think Gladius Task Force or Iron Storm are probably where he lives. Maybe... I would say that there's, like, maybe an argument for Firestorm, too. Because you can take, like, the Mass Hand Flamer unit. Oh, my God, Inky, you're scratching my leg. Holy shit. Ow. So that's pretty good. I bet it's not as good as Gladius. I would probably stick with Gladius or Strike. If I were to pick a detachment, the Strike's really good, and it would probably be Gladius, because they can make his unit hit really hard and be really fast at the same time, which is why Gladius is really good. And then you can also always, also get the other benefits of Gladius, which is, you get like the Fire Discipline combo. Yeah, I don't know, like it's good. It's good stuff. All right, chat. Let's talk about some other events. So let's move on. So we talked about the winning lists, or the winning teams from these two events. We'll move on to the big one, the Hispalis Imperium. And let me close down all these other tabs that I have open. Here we go. Lots of undefeated players. So let's look at the top teams. Atresmas and La Voz de Horus, both undefeated. The WTC format has a fairly wide margin for draws. So... Oh, yes, kitty? So if we look at their round 4 game, we can see how tight the score was. Yeah, 2-point margin is actually super legit. Holy crap! Look at how close this game, this round was. A 15-5 and a 16-4 that gets offset by an 0-20, but then 2 10-10s. Oh my god. That's super tight. That's insane. It looks like all these rounds are really, really, really close. And I think that goes to show you like how strong the team culture is in Spain. Because again, like Spanish events are just constantly these like huge team showdowns. And I bet that the Spanish metagame revolves around these like team compositions so much. So let's take a look at the top teams here. Let's look at La Voz de Horus, which, by the way, is a sweet... I talked about them in... I talked about them for the World Championship because they did the Spanish language stream for the World Championships, which was really nice. Good production value over there from those guys. So we do have a Chaos Space Marines and a Leagues of Votan, so some power in there. Grey Knights for the scoring. Grey Knights are incredibly strong. Chaos Knights are a good defense skew. There's a lot of armies that just can't deal with mass toughness 10, so that's what we're playing today. So Chaos Knights, and like we looked at the top, like Chaos Knights had some of the best records in this entire event. So out of 160 players, Chaos Knights had multiple undefeateds, I think. Blood Angels, which is probably... It was a Gladius Task Force. That's cool. Which is kind of an all-rounder, right? You have like good, fast melee units because you have Assault Doctrine. You have the Aggressor combo, the Aggressor Fire Discipline combo with a Apothecary Biologus in the Aggressor squad, which, as we've talked about like every single week, is just insane damage, like spike damage on something if you need it. Plus a Grav Devastator squad that's good at killing light vehicles. 2 6-man Inceptors with Plasma, so we can just like pop and drop people if we need to. You just drop the Oath of Moment on somebody, put an Inceptor squad 3 inches away from them, and then full reroll 18, or whatever it is, 12 full reroll 3 damage gunshots. That's gonna kill a lot of people, especially if you do ignore cover from Storm of Fire. Plus Infiltrators. Again, the Infiltrators are like I think sneakily good in this format because they can counterbalance any of the 3-inch deep strike factions, especially like other Space Marines. Sometimes you see a Phobos Librarian in there to supercharge the Infiltrator squads, but oftentimes you don't even need that. If you just keep them out of line of sight, you can basically like 6 Infiltrators will basically screen your entire deployment zone, which is super good. Like 5 out of 1 unit, and then like maybe one other screen somewhere else. So we're rocking 2 of those guys, plus a Scout Squad, plus a Librarian Dreadnought to teleport the infantry units around. I wonder how often the Infiltrators get teleported by the Librarian Dreadnought too, because you can just like push your deep strike screens into like bizarre areas without having to move them, which is very cool. So this is like, this list I think is kind of a problem solver. It's like very technical and has like a lot of answers to things. You know, we've got anti-deep strike tech. We've got like melee counter punches. We've got the aggressor brick, which can kill mass infantry. It can kill heavy vehicles. It can kill anything you want. And then Grey Knights are just like a scoring skew. Chaos Space Marines is another just like really strong army. Leagues of Votann does Leagues of Votann things. It goes first and wins sometimes. This list is a little bit more of a stat check. It's not the mass scout. It does have 3 units of 3 Hernkin Pioneers, plus 2 land fortresses. So we're stat checking a little bit off the land fortresses and the Hearthguard, and then just doing a bunch of reserve stuff. I appreciate that this one's it's kind of like the Votann list that we talked about on the Monday show. It feels like Votann is slowly moving towards being a more well-rounded army, because I think you can play like 12 to 18 Hernkin Pioneers and like 4 Sagitors, 4 plus Sagitors, and you can just win going first. But I think that those armies are so like first turn oriented that there is a lot of situations where you just die going second, because you can't hide them. They're so big and everything's a mounted or vehicle. There's very few infantry that like you have to just take the hit on the chin. And if your opponent's good at killing that like medium vehicle profile, like the T10 or T6 mounted profile, they'll just kill enough stuff that you eventually lose. And I think that the lists with land fortresses and with a heavier emphasis on reserves is much more resilient to that kind of result. So I think that these ones are more technical and probably more effective, but they don't get as big wins going first as the Scout army does. And then Chaos Space Marines doing Chaos Space Marine stuff. Ooh, Abaddon did a spoiler. Double Dark Communes. So no Chosen, but we're trying to skew with the Accursed Cultists, because, again, Accursed Cultists are one of those profiles that you kind of have to one-shot, but one-shotting them through the Nurgle strat is really tough. So outside of very few armies, like Tyranids might be able to do it, because they have a lot of, like, infantry sweeping. Tau can do it, and, like, maybe Space Marines can do it if they get the big aggressor bricks on them or something and get close enough to shoot them. Like, there are very few factions that can one-shot these Accursed Cultist units, and almost nobody does it efficiently. Everybody trades down into them. So this is like a skew army that you're trying to force matchups with. It has a little Vindicator. I love the Vindicator, by the way. The Vindicator's been seeing a lot more play recently. It's just like it's just obnoxious to kill like hyper lethal threat that sits in the middle of the table. The Forge Fiends oftentimes are like a one and done. They're kind of like a fire and forget missile if they're not the Nurgle one. Because nobody wants an undivided Forge Fiend to shoot multiple times, right? Because they will just kill, like, whatever. So it exposes itself, and if you can't play the angles quite as well as you'd hope, it gets like counter batteried really hard. But the Chaos Vindicator is hard enough to kill because it's high toughness 2+ save. Plus it's a Nurgle stratted, so you can put it in the middle of the table. If the Accursed Cultists have already committed, so you're not dark obscurating them, then the Vindicator gets the dark obscuration every turn and just sits there. It's like, boo-boo, shoot at 24 inches. Like, what are you going to do? Push past the Accursed Cultist to shoot at it? No. It's just going to hang out. I love that. Burning Chariot in the allied units, which I believe, if I remember correctly, it removes cover, which I assume that it does for everything, right? It's not, like, demon specific. Which is a good ability to have. It's very... especially for obliterators, if you can deep strike in the Burning Chariot into a position where it can shoot somebody, and then you can hit them with obliterators, even if they're indirect firing and you're going to shoot through cover. Yeah, it just removes cover from people. It doesn't care what your faction is. It's a little funky because like Chaos Space Marines usually have high enough AP values that oftentimes you are you don't really care about cover anyway. But it is good at clearing like awkward Space Marine infantry that your obliterators aren't super well statted to kill. I actually like that inclusion. That's really cool. It's only 115 points too. It has an okay range profile. It's only, you pick one. It's 3 shots at 3 damage, strength 9. So like you might pink a vehicle for 3, or it's like a pretty good flamer. But it's also just a deep striker, so you can use it for secondaries. And then also having that ability is like pretty strong too. And it's kind of not easy to kill because it's got a 4+ invulnerable save at toughness. I guess toughness 8 is whatever. But it like randomly will just spike in bone saves and not die, which is cool. +2 to Nurglings, blue scrubs because they rule. This is a very cool list. I think specifically for like team events. You probably, I don't know if you would see this list in a singles event. I think people are like slowly answering the Massacre's Cultist lists. Like you don't see them quite as often anymore. I think people have realized that Chosen have like more agency in the game. Accursed Cultists are, if they're not on their go turn, they're kind of slow. If your opponent's not shooting them, so they're not regenerating units and models in front of them, then like they're just move 6 dudes. And if they're not Slanesh marked, which they often aren't because you want Undivided or Nurgle for the strats, they don't have advance and charge outside their 1 go turn, so they're just like moving 6 inches a turn. And your opponent can kind of like mitigate their threat a little bit until it's the go time. But that's what we've been seeing a lot of players getting really good at doing, is like answering the threat of the Accursed Cultists by like slowing them or preventing them from getting into valuable targets until they have the opportunity to like fully commit and one-shot the whole unit. I just streamed last week. We streamed an awesome game, which should hopefully will be up on the replay channel this week. Eldar versus Chaos Space Marines, and there was like some really technical counterplay to the Accursed Cultists in that game. It was really, really cool to watch because it was, you look at an Eldar list with like very little blast, very little anti-infantry shooting, and you're like, how are they going to deal with these Accursed Cultists? And I mean, it turns out if you just pour enough gunshots into them, eventually you'll kill them. But you need your whole team to commit. But you have to be able to like play around Dark Obscuration, play around their threat range, play around the second unit, like give it things to chew on, like force it to charge in weird ways, and then full commit your army into the other unit and kill it, and like leave your opponent out of position. It was really cool. All right, how did they do in pairings? Poor guard, not good enough for individual and not good enough for team. We did see a little bit of guard, but they're not on the top armies right now. I actually think that the I think that guard being not good enough in individual events is a myth. Because as we've been seeing, I think that they have a tough time winning individual events, but their X-1 record is like nuts. Like they win 4 out of 5 like a lot of times. Like I think it was last week we watched 2 or 3 guard players go X-1, which was like more than basically any other faction beyond the big 3 at the top. And so like I don't think that they're bad in individual events. I think it's just like probably specific matchups because they're so ranged oriented that there are matchups where there's like your opponent's just like, oh, windmill slam Dark Obscuration. And you're like, well, I guess I go fuck myself. But I think they've got enough stuff going for them to cut the mustard. I think you have to be good with them though. And I do think that they're also like they're a faction kind of like Space Marines where like you can look at their win percentage, which I think is like probably is like in the 40s right now. It's not great. But I think that there's like a big community of guard players that don't want to play the good stuff, and I think that it's like Space Marines where people are like, oh, all I want to do is play Imperial Fists, and I just want to play Torgaradon in every game. And you're like, all right, that's good, like that's fine, but you have to be good to win with Torgaradon. And they're like, no, I got 2-3 every event. And so you're just like, well, if you look at the full spectrum of Space Marines, a lot of people are playing those armies, which are very bad. And that's the same with guard. Where people are like, I want to play triple Bane Sword, and you're like, all right, you're probably not going to win many games, but you're going to have a good time. But it also is like wildly affects. They have like a huge differential, I think, in the win percentage. So that's plus it's a very popular army. You see a lot of guard players everywhere, and I think that it's one where like the community influences the win percentage to a greater, like, what am I trying to say? To like in directions that like are you know that the faction doesn't in a way that doesn't necessarily represent the power of the faction, I think. And then a lot of people point to that and be like, oh look, they're bad. You're like, are they? The good lists are good. The list with like two Rogaldorns backed up by like 40 Catachan Jungle Fighters backed up by Gaunt's Ghosts and Lord Solar, like those lists are really strong. Hi, Katie. All right. let's take a look at these pairings. So this round was a big blowout. As I talk about how good Astronaut's Arm is, they get 20-0'd by Chaos Knights. Although we did watch that matchup recently, and I feel like I think it might simply be a bad matchup for Guard. I think that Guard lose to the toughness skews. They're like so good into heavy infantry. Like Basilisk and Manticores are so strong into like infantry that it's out in the open, where they're like wounding on 2s or 3s. But they're so inconsistent against heavy armor. Because you have to like roll your hits, right? Which is like pretty consistent, right? You're usually hitting on 2s or 3s with rerolls. But like, how many lethals do you get? Then you're rolling 4-ups to save, to wound. Then they're probably on 4-ups to save or 5-ups to save. So like, there's like multiple avenues where they can spike, and it ends up making your average damage like probably 4.5 or something. Like you get 2 converted wounds onto somebody, but your spike damage is like super high or super low. So they're very inconsistent against heavy armor. So you're kind of like hoping that the tank commanders have enough beef, but the tank commanders just get vaporized by mass like melta-guns. So I feel like that's probably a bad one for them. That felt very go first oriented when we were watching it. Plus this Chaos Knights list is like is apparently like just killing everyone. So who knows? At 20-0 Necrons. This is a Lich Guard Necron army. I can definitely see the Lich Guard being able to be killed by the Chaos Knights. Plus, they're not super high OC. They're low OC unless there's a Catacomb Command Barge, which there is not. So they're all OC 1. So all you have to do is kill a couple of them and get through the Resurrection Orb. Like, get through the point where they can resurrect back to OC 9, and then you contest the objective with a single Armiger, or a single War Dog. But you probably have 2 on them at any one time. And then you can get like multiple multi-damage Melta shots on them, force mass 3-up saves with the little guns, the Reaper chain cannons, and then like go in and hit a tank shock, and then hit them with the melee, which probably kills like 2 more models. So you can probably put a Lich Guard unit down to like 3 or 4 models outside of the characters every turn, and then just steal the objective from them, and they don't really hit you back very hard. So I could definitely see that being problematic for them. Look at this Drukhari matchup. This is Drukhari result though. Oh my god. Just sniped the Leagues of Votann over here. Get out of here, Leagues of Votann. You just get dumpstered. These are mass Reavers. These units of 6 Reavers? That's cool. This list is cool. It's just super fast light units. So it's a Solitaire, double Mandrakes. So like Blitzing Solitaire plus 2 uppy downies, plus Kabalite Warriors split into Venoms. So we can either keep the Dark Lances on the table if we want them to shoot, or we can put them in the Venoms for objective grabbing. And then everything else is like a super fast thing with multiple Heat Lances. And the Reavers do mortal wounds on the approach too. So this is like just mass Dark Lances. 12 Dark Lances out of the Scourges, 6 Dark Lances out of the Ravagers, 3 Heat Lances across all the Reavers. 6 Heat Lances across all the Reavers too. Plus 2 more Dark Lances from the Kabalite Warriors. So we're rocking 20 Dark Lances and 6 Heat Lances. Were there Talos anywhere? No. So if you're trying to rock up the table with Hecaton Land Fortresses, oh boy, is that a nightmare. Don't worry, boys. Our high toughness and armor will protect us. This is Drukhari players like. Plus, you're like, what are you gonna oath or whatever the stupid tokens, judgment token? What are you gonna judgment token in this unit, right? Like, how Lilith Hesperax, the individual Lilith Hesperax. That's a cool inclusion too. She could just like rock in a Venom alongside like 5 Kabalites and just pop out somewhere and like blow up an objective by herself. Because she doesn't get all the cool benefits from joining a Witch unit, which is like +1 strength and AP, I think. But she's anti-infantry 3 with like 1 billion attacks. How many attacks does she get? Let's see if I have her noted down here. Nope. Let's pull up Lila's data sheet. I do like her with witches. I mean, she's with 5 witches, she's like kind of a problem. I think the issue with that unit is surviving Overwatch because it's so fragile. If you lose the 5 witches, Lila's damage output drops like precipitously. So it's oftentimes not worth the additional expenditure. Just forgot what faction I was looking for a second there. Lilith Hesperex. What are your stats? There she is. Jesus, that took way too long. Yeah, she would get +1 strength and AP from leading, but she doesn't get that if if there's no witches. But yeah, she goes to 12 anti-infantry 3, and she has a 3+ and won't save. Or anti-infantry 2, excuse me. Plus you're hitting on like negative ones, so you probably swing 12 times, hit 14 is the average if you have no rerolls. And you can like 2+ weapon skill sustain 2. If you have a pain token available for her, you just give her the pain token and fish for 6s. So then she's probably like she gets like 2 6s and then like 1.5 more 6s. So she's probably good for like 10 hits on criticals plus like 8 more. So she's probably good for like 18 or 20 hits at anti-infantry 2. So she forces like 18 or 20 AP2s on you. Maybe 16. Call it like 16 AP2s on average, I think is just about where she's at. Ooh, that's scary. That's very scary. For 85 points. Man, Lilith rocks. Plus, she's a succubus, so she unlocks the Real Space Raider extra paint token. And we have an Archon to stand on the table, too. So we can drop Archons into both Cavalite Warrior units, or we can put an Archon just on the table with 10 Cavalite Warriors, so we get Agents of active from turn 1. That's spicy. This list rules. This isn't even the list we were talking about. I mean, again, I think Drukhari is another one of these factions that like super duper benefits from team events, because the downside of Drukhari is factions that they can't overwhelm with their like massive rerolling Dark Lances, and the upside is you get to put them into like multiple Hecaton Veiline Fortress Leagues of Votann, where it's just a defensive profile that is perfectly answered by Dark Lances. And you're just like, well, here you go. Like, Leagues of Votann have almost no answer to Scourges. Like, I don't know how that army kills Scourges. Because all you need to do is, like, peek a Sagittor, peek a Land Fortress, shoot it 4 times. You probably get 1 hit through and, like, chunk it for 6 damage. And then you walk behind a wall. As long as your backline's screened out so that Hearthguard can't Dream Strike in to kill you, like, they can maybe come out of reserve with a Pioneer unit or something and try to, like, make the 9-inch charge, but you have enough like random idiot chaff to screen it out. That's probably such a positive matchup for Drukhari. They just have all the answers there. Green Knights annihilating Tyranids. Sorry, Tyranids. An invasion fleet Tyranid. Interesting. And then moving on, Chaos Knights with another 20-0. Leagues of Votann destroying Chaos Demons. It's not the hardest thing in the world. Leagues of Votann drawing against Chaos Space Marines, which, oh my god. Inky just tripped. Inky, I saw that. Yeah, I know. My cat's uncoordinated as hell, chat. They did go down twice this game, or this event, so yeah, but the 2 20-0s offset the losses. So they did. It is a draw in terms of win-loss, but the scores is what pushed it over. Again, like Grey Knights into World Eaters. World Eaters is very aggressive and like very high scoring, so World Eaters can get out of a lot of matchups where they aren't necessarily super favored if the opposing army doesn't have good answers to melee. Grey Knights are very good at dodging the melee hits in that matchup, but they're very bad at scoring. Because a lot of times what they want to do is like come onto the table and then shoot you off an objective, but the World Eaters are just going to pop their sticky on that objective when they die. So, and Grey Knights, like, you can miss some demos out of the melee threat ranges as well, but it's not like a perfect answer. So they probably get outscored by World Eaters. They're very good at killing World Eaters, but they're largely gonna be outscored. But again, they can score highly enough themselves because they just like complete all their tactical objectives that it's probably fine. Our Blood Angels player apparently got annihilated by Andres Taco. Death Guard. Death Guard again. Mass Plague Marine Death Guard. Which is interesting. Just kind of like outstanding the Space Marines. That Aggressor Brick can only be one place at a time. Can't kill all the Plague Marines with the Aggressor Brick. And so they just get to push it out. Round 4. 2 draws. Votann into CSM. Again? That's the same result as the last game, right? Jesus. Yeah. Okay. That's interesting. Votann probably has the profile to kill the... This is the Accursed Cultist list, right? And they probably have the profile to kill the Accursed Cultist list. But like, doing so through Dark Obscuration and also one-shotting the unit so it doesn't regenerate is probably a little tough. Chaos Space Marines versus Grey Knights Tide. And then this is their draw game. Yes, so 2 draws. Chaos Knights 20 out again, which is good for them. Leagues of Votann got pushed out by World Eaters, which is not too surprising because World Eaters can just like the Leagues of Votann ability to scout really heavily doesn't work so well if all your scouts just die immediately as soon as they do that to all the World Eater stuff. And then Chaos Knights with another 20-0. Jesus. Miguel Dura, stop. You need to calm down, my dude. Just killing everyone. Everyone's dead. Chaos Knights just murder. Doing the murders. This is versus Imperial Knights. Yeah, that's not too surprising, actually. The Chaos Knights don't get counted as assassins, but they sure do. They sure do love killing Imperial Knights. Leagues of Votann went down pretty hard to World Eaters again. Wow, this is like just a recreation of the last round, essentially. Our Blood Angels went down in a close one to Necrons. With Lich Guard and Doomsday Arcs. It's interesting. Maybe just they weren't able to quite clear the Lich Guard units and they respawned. And then Grey Knights absolutely dumpstered Leagues of Votann. That's interesting. That's a big win against Leagues of Votann. It's multiple Sagitaurs. I feel like Sagitaurs would be a little bit difficult for Grey Knights to deal with. Maybe they can kill them with the Librarians, and then like use the small guns to kill everybody inside over and over again. But it feels like your opponent's just left with land fortresses at the end of the day. I guess like Votann tends to be kind of mid AP for the most part. Everything's like a AP 1-2 damage, and so you can kind of like you can Armor of Contempt your way through a lot of the shooting and just save on 2-ups with Grey Knights, which is probably fine. So you might just be equally not very good at killing each other, which I think works for the faction. Works well for the faction that can up B Downy every turn with their entire army. They're just more maneuverable. Pretty cool. Night Spinners are the reason Eldar aren't winning anything big. Like, because people are playing Night Spinners? Or because Night Spinners are good against other Eldar? Like, is the consideration that Eldar are like team killing a lot? But like also the narrative that Eldar aren't winning anything is like super is like it's just not true because they are winning a lot. They are consistently the highest scoring army every week. They have the highest number of X&Os every week. Or at least tied with one of the other top 3, like Votann or Chaos Space Marines, and one of the other top factions. I think saying that Eldar aren't winning anything is like definitely wrong. But I could definitely see that their average scores are probably like the Night Spinners are not good for scoring points, but they are good for winning games. I think that they increase your win rate, but not necessarily your average score, if that makes sense. Lilith kills double the MAQs when she's with witches. Yeah, because they go from saving on 5s to saving on 6s, right? So yeah, she literally improves the converted wounds by she reduces the successful saves by 50%. Yeah, that makes total sense. But again, it's like you're taking up the entire transport for witches at that point, essentially, right? Because you need a transport specifically for her. There's no way to get another non-character unit in the transport alongside her. I guess you could take like racks in 5s, right? But like I don't know if anybody's not really that excited about it. And you kind of want her to be like as flexible as possible. So I understand the rationale for not taking witches with her. I just think like I'm physically like mortified by the witch unit. Like I've been boned by that witch unit so hard. Just like coming out of reserve and like screaming engines that thing out of reserve into an awkward place, and then the next turn just disembark and like clear an entire objective off with 5 models. I'm just like, oh my god, oh, it's so scary. It's so scary. All right, here's our number one team. Let's take a look at the placements. All right, chat, here we go. We've got some Astra Militarum. There you go for all you Astra Militarum fans out there. And this is the team. This team placed higher than Lavaz de Horus, so they did better. But again, I think that the downside of Astra Militarum, and this is a criticism of the faction right now, I think that the list or the list archetype is like very set in stone. I don't think if you want to be successful with Astra Militarum, you can really deviate from what we're about to see here. Because we've seen this in basically every single successful Astra Militarum list. Which is, like, it sucks, right? But at least I think the faction's good. It's just good in this one particular build. Which is unfortunate, but it is what it is. We'll get some... Hopefully, we'll see some love to some of these factions in January, and we'll get some better variety out of them. So it's Gats Ghosts, Lord Solar Leontis, a platoon command squad for Lord Solar to join into, plus Ursula Creed. 1, 2, just 2 Catachan Jungle Fighters, 2 infantry squads. One of those usually goes in the back with Lord Solar, so he can use their box. Plus 2 Chimeras for the Catachan Jungle Fighters. 3 Hellhounds for Ignore Cover, 1 Basilisk, 3 Manticores, Regimental Attaches. 1, 2, 3 Scout Sentinels, and a Calidus Assassin. So basically, like, this one's a little bit less direct fire oriented than we normally see. Usually you would see like 2 Hellhounds, probably just 1 to 2 Manticores, I think. And then you would roll the rest of those into Rogelborns and Leman Russ. But I think this is probably a concession to team events because we want to run the mass indirect fire to really scare like a lot of heavy infantry factions, like like Thousand Suns, to a lesser extent, like some Chaos Space Marine builds, like a lot of Space Marine builds will just like be rocking multi-wound infantry on the table, and they just get picked up by artillery. Which is why Rhinos are so valuable right now, is because everybody needs to survive a turn against Manticores and Night Spinners. Speaking of Night Spinners, we're running a very spicy Yanari army. So Yinkarn and Yvrain in a battle host, plus a Farseer and Spirits here. No enhancements. Who needs them? Who needs... Oh, no, there's a Fate's Messenger. Just kidding. Plus 3 units of 5 Ranger... 2 units of 5 Rangers, excuse me. 5 Mandrakes for the Upbeat Downy. 3 units of 5 Scourges with Dark Lances. So the benefit of these is that, for whatever reason, all the Drukhari units have the Eldari keyword. It's not a faction keyword, but that doesn't matter. Faction keywords and faction keywords only matter for like faction selection. Faction keywords and regular keywords are viewed the same by the rules for every other instance, which means that every Drukhari unit that you add to your Yanari army also benefits from all of the detachment abilities and stratagems. So Scourges are like a fast-moving unit that can fire and fade twice because they shoot after they move after shooting and then can fire and fade at the end of the phase. So if you're like, oh man, we drew behind enemy lines, a Scourge unit just moves like 26 inches. And like just gets there. Plus they get the floating reroll, so they don't get full rerolls from pain tokens, but they get a unparalleled foresight reroll, which is like roughly equivalent. So they're like their average damage output's like similar, and they get a bunch of other benefits as well. It's like sort of nutty. Plus we have a Wraithguard unit and triple Night Spinners. So yeah, just super heavy damage out of this army. This is like just an armor cracker, essentially. We have like Rangers that you can use to like body block and take up the mid board early, and then just be like constantly slowing people down with Night Spinners to keep your score up. Wraithguard just hold the mid board, and then Scourges are in the backline just vaporizing people. Plus you have the Incarn doing Incarn stuff, and the triple Wraith Night Spinner is a good combo with the Incarn, because you have a lot of twin length shots that could potentially kill something that then allows the Incarn to teleport in and charge. Pretty classic. Yeah, it's good stuff. Good old-fashioned Ynnari stuff. Dark Angels as well in here. This is a normal Gladius task force. It's just got Deathwing Knights is the reason that we are in the task force. We have a Fire Discipline combo. Do we? With Eradicators, I guess. That's interesting. So I think we're probably just using that to help solve like armor skews. Huh. That's cool. A little different. Plus a Phobos Librarian. Oh, we got him, chat. He's in there. A Phobos Librarian for an Infiltrator squad. So we have the untargetable anti-deep strike effect. That's so good in Teams events, right? Because that unit alone, some factions that are very, very predicated on 3-inch deep strikes, this unit alone will just beat them. Like Genestealer cults just like curl up and cry against that unit. They have no way to interact with it outside of rapid ingress. And even then, that's not that great. Because they have to be 12 inches out, and then they still have to move like their full distance to get in range for, or greater. They still have to, yeah, advance in to get in range with demolition charges. If they underswing the advance and the infiltrator unit squad tactics out, there's a non-zero chance that a deep striking acolyte hybrid squad will advance up onto a Phobos infiltrator squad, a librarian infiltrator squad, and not do any damage to it and not be able to shoot, and then just die. Like, this unit is so nutty in some situations. And then we have a Terminator Captain. That's for the big unit of Deathwing Knights. So those guys are going to rapid ingress in, and then use Honor the Chapter to get +1 to wound and AP, so they can actually punch through stuff. It's like mass 3 damage, but their downside is like mid-strength, mid-AP. And the +1 to wound and +1 AP really helps with that, which is why you see them. That used to be, we saw this for when the index originally came out. These guys were in like almost every Gladius task force was shifting towards Dark Angels to take this unit because it was so synergistic with Gladius task force, but that's slowly moved away. A big Inceptor squad, 2 little Inceptor squads, plus I love this inclusion. 2 units of 5 Assault Jump Pack Intercessors. These guys are so fast under Assault Doctrine. You can Honor the Chapter them so they can punch through like toughness 4, even like toughness 5-ish enemies pretty efficiently, because they go to AP2 with +1 to wound, and they have I believe 4 attacks apiece. So they're still stringing like 20-ish times, and they can get power fists and multiple plasma pistols and stuff. And then they just trade for objectives at 85 points, which is like super solid. So they're just sort of like a utility unit that in a pinch you can use to just like hammer an enemy unit off an objective. Plus they do, speaking of hammer, they do Hammer of Wrath Mortals too. So they're going to do a couple wounds on the way in, and then you can +1 to wound them, and they'll kill like 5 Space Marines or 10 regular idiots. They'll pretty efficiently kill most other chaff units, and that's something that Space Marines really need, because oftentimes you're like killing their chaff with like Land Raider Redeemers, and that's not a very efficient trade. But Assault Intercessors give you that out. So that's a pretty sweet list. A little bit different than most of the Gladius task forces we've been seeing. Another Leagues of Votann. This one is double N here, champion, double call. Okay. So this one's running mass Sagitaurs. 5 Sagitaurs. How many Harnkin Pioneers? 9 Harnkin Pioneers. So we are running, this is the mass scout skew. I think that there's probably an argument for this style in a team event because you can put it into matchups that are kind of difficult, and maybe don't have like the best defensive profiles against Votann shooting, and you could just win the roll off. Like it's a 50-50 to just like push your opponent out of scenario, because you just deploy on the line, put all the Sagittors in the middle of the table, and then hen them in with the Hernkin Pioneers. So the Hernkin Pioneers like move 9 inches, then just run up and surround their deployment zone. So they can't move in. You get a round of shooting on them with the Hernkin Pioneers and maybe the Sagittors if they haven't deployed super defensively. Then they like kill the Hernkin Pioneers, and then you get another round of shooting in, and the Hearthguard come down and just kill, like you're dead at that point probably. If it goes second, like I said at the beginning, I think it's really bad. But if it goes first, oh boy, you in for a bad time. So that's kind of cool. Plus, like, people have to be considering it, right? There's always a situation where you're just like, oh man, I'm worried about this like mass scout skew, which is really tough. This list is pretty interesting. It's a big Terminator squad for Abaddon to go into. Sometimes we see this actually wrap an ingress under the table, because it's like a delivery system for Abaddon. Oftentimes in like the Lavasta Horus army that we saw, Abaddon's by himself, and he'll start on the table and hide behind a wall the entire game and just shoot his gun up in the air to trigger Dark Pacts to get your CP. So he's like a late game anchor, who will generate UCP in like rounds 1 to 2, and then he'll push up around 3+ and kill whatever is killing your Dark Commune units. And the list with the Terminators in it usually plays it much more aggressively. So you'll like push the Dark Commune units early. So we're seeing 3 units of Accursed Cultists with Chaos Undivided marks. So they're just yeeting themselves up the table. And then the Chaos Terminator squad will either start on the table and try to use the stratagems to protect them and push their threat range, and kind of just like dump all the strats into the Terminator squad, or just rapid ingress in, like behind the Accursed Cultists in a position where they're not going to die, and then just slash strat the next turn and get into melee really easily. And then it becomes much more about like how much damage you can get out of the Terminator squad, because it's 700 points with Abaddon in the unit. So it's like a third of your army, but it kills almost literally anything in the game will die to the Abaddon squad once it touches you. Between Dark Pacts and Profane Zeal, you're full rerolling with all of these like special abilities that unlocked. So you're like 5-up lethal sustains. Yeah, it just like goes insane. Pretty good. +2 fortune points for shooting. Much more technical, I think, than the other versions though, because you have to baby Abaddon so hard. Like if his unit gets out of position and just gets picked up by a bunch of like 3 damage blasts, like all those Manticores we've been talking about, right? It's just like, you know, oh, you don't have CP for Armor of Contempt, or like even if you do, you just get Leman Russ exterminated, you lose a guy, you get like Scout Sentinel, you get Hellhounded, so you're like no cover, no indirect penalty, reroll 1s, and like 3 Manticores just like killed 7 Terminators, now on Battle Shocks, and it's like a mess. Can definitely happen. Alright, let's look at some matchups here. Oh, that's not what I wanted to do. No. Nice. Every army including Sororitas? Dude, we've just talked about Sororitas that get like multiple 20s. So yes. I think especially Sororitas. There's a narrative, I think, from the pre-Data Slate season that Adeptus Sororitas are like, oh, Adeptus Sororitas suck. They can't crack armor or do anything. And like now they have one of the highest win rates in the game. So there's this narrative that Adeptus Sororitas are like really bad, but it's strictly false. Adeptus Sororitas are fucking nuts right now. And I think they're especially nuts in team events because they're so high scoring that you can put them into bad matchups or mediocre matchups and they'll always like pull out wins for you. So it's interesting because we're seeing a lot of draws out of Leagues of Votann. It feels like Leagues of Votann have ended up being, outside of like that Drukhari matchup, which apparently is really bad, Leagues of Votann have ended up being kind of like a sink, I think. They give up a lot of secondaries because you're almost always good for Bring It Down against them. Not the double Land Fortress list, but the list with this like... the list with all the Sagittors... I guess it's only 15 points on Bring It Down, so they don't even give up Bring It Down very well, unless they're running Sagittors and Land Fortresses, which is tough. But they're kind of like passive, I think. They don't have a lot of melee, so you can kind of do whatever you want in the midboard against them. You just have to assume that they're going to kill everything that they can see. But that means you can score pretty effectively against them. So we've been seeing them get a lot of like 10-10s, I think. But otherwise, this was kind of a blowout. Round 2. Big blowout. Orcs, again, very aggressive, high-scoring army. So they took a couple points off Leagues of Votann. Genestealer Cults, another high-scoring army, took a couple points off Chaos Space Marines, but not enough to make a huge difference. This was, Jesus Christ, 95-5. Oh my god. I think this is like team tournaments at their full power, right? Because it's like Eldar, CSM, Leagues of Votann, which are 3 of like the top 3 scoring factions. Plus Space Marines, which is like the top winning, like the most winningest faction, plus Astra Militarum, which is just like a like weird artillery skew. So you're just like, and there you go. See, right? Adeptus Sororitas, we've talked about so often being really, really good at scoring with lots of little units, and you need indirect fire to deal with them. And Astra Militarum are just like, hey, buddy, how's 3 Manticores of the Basilisk for you? They just like start vaporizing all your Crusaders and Battle Sister squads and stuff. But that's the kind of answer that you need, right, to prevent these factions from just passively scoring their way to victory. Yes, Inky, very exciting. But that was another blowout. Getting a little bit tougher. Leagues of Votann dropped to Adeptus Astartes. So this one's a little bit harder. This Ynnari army apparently is just beating Eldar every turn, every game. Because we've seen multiple 20-0s against other Eldar armies. Which is interesting. Because it feels like it is Night Spinner susceptible. I guess, like, do they have Night Spinners? Yeah, triple Night Spinner. Interesting. That's so weird. Because the Scourges are just so fragile to them. The Scourges kind of don't do anything. But I wonder if you just use them for utility. Because they're so good at utility the turn that they come in. They can drop in 9 inches away from you and then shoot and move. And so you can usually get, like, pretty good maneuver secondaries and stuff. So you just hold them until turn 2 or turn 3 when you need them. And then it's fine. And you don't even really need them to do any damage. And I guess, like, also, if they're running Wraithguard bricks, you can come in and actually just, like, dumpster a bunch of Wraithguard with them, probably. Because it is 12 Darklane shots. So you might just hold it until you need it until you're like going all in on the Wraithguard unit, and then you just go in and your Wraithguard shoot their Wraithguard, and then you shoot them with all the Scourges, and they just like vaporize. I could see that. That's so hard to do with Phantasm though. Eldar's just what a matchup. What a faction. Astra Militarum against Grey Knights get the big W. Grey Knight's good at scoring generically, but Astra Militarum can probably outscreen them, and then the artillery is kind of a nightmare because you're just constantly losing Terminators over the course of the game. It's not like the triple Hellhounds helps too, because you can push the Hellhounds up to where you have line of sight, and then they don't get cover. So their Terminators are probably saving on 4s even against the indirect fire, unless they Armor of Contempt. Through 3 Manticores will just like vaporize a bunch of Terminators the turn that you get the combo assembled. Are there figures of the Order founder and Sororitas like you have Primarchs? No, there are not. The Primarchs are, well, I mean, in 40k, I guess. Like, the 30k Primarchs are different, because that's set in the before 4 times. But the Primarchs in 40k are contemporaneous to the game. Whereas, to my knowledge, I'm not, like, a lore buff, but Adeptus Sororitas are you know, like 5,000 years old or whatever. So all of the founders of all of these orders, I think, would have been long dead at that point. Unlike Primarchs, they're not like immortal god beings, right? There are some special characters that are representing the different factions, but currently they don't work like Space Marines do, where you have to separate out the orders. You can play them all together. So, like Morven Val, who's I think she's like the Supreme Abbess or whatever. She's the leader, the Supreme Commander of the Adeptus Sororitas. So she's like a High Lord of Terra who commands all the Sororitas. She's in there. And then you have like Junith Eroida, who is Armored Lady, I think. And there's some other sub-factions that are represented by characters, but you don't have to separate them out. There's no independent rules for each of the different orders. You can play all your Sororitas characters in one army. Space Marines can't do that, though. They suck. And then the finals game was a close one, 63-37. Leagues of Votann with an 11-9 against World Eaters. I think yeah, we discussed this matchup previously. Like the World Eaters are so good at killing all the scouting stuff, but if you can create enough space and just like separate yourself for long enough that you can shoot them to death, that's probably pretty good. Dark Angels annihilated Chaos Knights. The Dark Angel or the Deathwing Terminator brick is like I think really tough for Chaos Knights to deal with because Chaos Knights saves aren't that great. So the low AP of the Terminator unit isn't that bad because they're just on 4-ups basically regardless. And if you are Armor of Contempting in Assault Doctrine, then you're putting them on 5s. It takes multiple hits to kill almost any Deathwing Knight outside of the Melta. The Melta might one-shot them. I think it does automatically one-shot them because they're -1 damage, but you're +4 if you're within 12 inches. But it's so inconsistent because you're like 3s into 2s or 2s into 2s, but they save on a 4, so you might get one through. Plus, there's an Eradicator unit. Like there's a Fire Discipline combo Eradicator unit in that list, which could probably kill like 2 War Dogs a turn. And that might be why it's in there, is because as we've seen before, Chaos Knights are such a problem in this format because there's like if you can put them into specific matchups, they're so unstoppable in some circumstances. But if you have this unit that can split fire and kill 2 War Dogs a turn because it's full rerolls with Meltaguns, that's a little tough. That's tough for them to get through. I think if there's a turn where you kill 4 War Dogs, the game's basically over. And the Eradicators alone can probably kill at least 1.5, and then the Terminators can kill 2 for sure. And then their consistency back against the Terminators isn't great, and the Terminators can just like pop Tactical Doctrine, fall back, charge back in, +1 to wound, everything wins on 4s, and puts them on a 4+ save. So whatever is remaining on the Terminator unit will absolutely kill whatever engage them. That's really interesting. Plus, you also have that Infiltrator squad, which can sit out in the open against the Chaos Knights. It's not worried about their shooting because it's untargetable, and it prevents the Nurglings from coming in and doing backline secondaries, which is super tough too. It just kind of has that Chaos Knights list coming and going, actually. Like the Chaos Knights have to take the hit on the chin, and they can do a bunch of damage on the swing back, right? Because they can come back and kill all the aggressors, and they can maybe ding up the Terminator unit, but like, do they kill enough quickly enough, I think is the question. I don't think the answer is yes. Chaos Space Marines went down to World Eaters. Oh no, to other Chaos Space Marines, just kidding. Boring. The Chaos Space Marine mirror match is like very yawn-inducing in my opinion. It's just like two like just wildly powerful hammer armies just like punching each other directly in the face. Astra Militarum won against Leagues of Votann. That's interesting. The Votann don't feel like they have a great profile at shooting the artillery yet, but I guess it's fine. Like they have the Hearthguard are probably a little scared of the Manticores. The Land Fortresses are kind of immune to them though. But maybe they just get stopped up by the Catachan Jungle Fighters to the point that like they don't push far enough ahead, and their profiles like aren't that good against the tanks. Like all the Imperial Guard tanks are a 2+ save, so having mass low AP shootings kind of sucks for the Votann, and you have so many tanks that they can't Judgment Token all of them, so they don't get their +1 to hit and wound against everybody. That might be sort of the Inky. That might be kind of the dynamic there. And then a Ynnari mirror match, boring. That just comes down to whoever's Night Spinners do better, probably. Whoa, 2 units of 3 Night Spinners shooting at each other. What a time to be alive. Cool. This matchup's pretty wild though. That's kind of insane because we've seen Chaos Knights just crush people the entire time. Let's look at player placings. Look at how these Chaos Knights players ended up. Yeah, so the Chaos Knights Lavasta de Horus went 100 points out of 100. They did not drop a single matchup point over the entire game, the entire event. That's nuts. Who was this player? This was from Team Conclave. Oops. He did a lot worse. 2 11s, a 17, and 2 0s. That is unfortunate. But his team did very well, if I remember correctly. Conclave was 4th. So they might have just thrown him to the wolves a lot of times, and they just like ran into matchups that were bad for them. Whereas it seems like the plan for Lavasta Horus was much different, and they put their Chaos Knights into good matchups the entire weekend and got a bunch of points from it. Clearly a pretty good plan. Good stuff. So see what I mean, chat? I think the team event dynamics are pretty cool. There's like a lot of cool stuff to talk about, but it is much more complicated than talking about single player events, because the amount of factors that go into Inky's sitting on my foot right now. The amount of factors that go into determining the final result and the power level of an army is like way more complicated than it is in the singles format, which is a little bit more straightforward. But with that, I think unless anybody has any factions they want me to dive into, I think we're going to go ahead and kind of call it there. I think this has been a really, really interesting discussion. Talking about these results has been really cool. And I think like the team dynamics is really interesting and cool. It is, like I said, though, very complicated. But fun and sweet. So yeah, anyway. If you haven't had enough of me jawing at you for multiple hours, I will be live over on the Purple channel in an hour. So you can come hang out with me over there. I also, it's been a little funky. The replay channel has had been struggling a little bit. I think YouTube like changed their algorithm, and my replays get flagged for demonetization on the get-go, and so I have to submit them for manual review every time, which has been a little tough. So if you've been craving VOD content, they're actually like in a holding pattern right now, so we might not have VODs up for a couple days, which is really awkward. I don't know what happened there. There's like maybe like something in the content gets like automated, like flagged by an automated system. I don't know, chat. I just don't know. I have no idea. Yeah. So that's what's up. Otherwise, yeah, we're going to be streaming on Twitch all week. You can expect probably a video. I don't know if I have any rules videos out this week, but I think I will have a video about the Space Marine Captain list. Probably Thursday, I think, is going to be the release date for that one. So if you liked the Snakes on a Plane list, please come watch that one when it's out. In addition, we should have another game with the Space Marine Captain list on Sunday. Or no, on Friday. Excuse me. Friday night. 8 p.m. U.S. Eastern. Which should be good. So, yeah. Anyway, chat, I think I'm going to go ahead and wrap things up there. Thanks, everybody, for hanging out with me. I'll see you over in the Purple Zone in a little while. And otherwise, remember to keep it classy, have happy wargaming, do all that stuff, and take it easy.